Hello, everybody. Welcome to Queer Games Heck Yeah for today. I'm Luke Miller. I'm a game dev helping out with the Queer Games Festival. I love queer games. I love queer games because they're really at the forefront of gaming. I think a lot of the trends and things you see in queer games today, like in the indie scene, are filtering their way into mainstream games. And, you know, so you should be excited about queer games, I guess. I was like halfway into a really good spiel and then I botched a little bit. But that's queer games heck yeah. It's me starting off trying to say something and then getting derailed. I mean, some of the things I love about queer games, contemporary settings a lot of the times, biographical. The last game we played in queer games heck yeah was super autobiographical, non-violent, but I mean about violence, or had tremendous violence in it in a way, but there wasn't a gun to be seen. You don't need, you know, you don't need the trappings of violence to tell a story about violence, I guess. Or, maybe real violence is different to what we see in mainstream games. I mean, I guess that's kind of comes to like a broader point that I'd like to make queer games, that they're just realer than mainstream games in a way that, like like a lot of indie films and books and that are realer than mainstream films and TV, which are kind of very broadly played. Everything's got its place, and if you want to make money, make something mainstream. But thank goodness there are people who don't want to make money, who want to just make art, and that's what we've got. I'm still thinking about the last game we played, Gua Coco. Like the further we get away from it, the worse I get at pronouncing the title. I think it was like a Spanish title or Venezuelan. Which is just I'm terrible at it. So apologies for that. But it just I'm still thinking about it because it also it told a pretty dark story, but it framed it in a way of healing. You were sort of remembering these things, but the act of remembering and then throwing the seashell into the water was a way of healing. And I just think that's something queer games are just so they're doing such interesting work at the moment about considering the mental health of the players. Because it's like I think we're kind of beginning to realize as a civilization that software actually can affect your mood. It can affect your life. Like we all know about addictive software, and there's a lot of games that are using dark patterns, we call them dark smells, to encourage you to stay at that loop. But it's such a fine line between like making compelling gameplay and making something deliberately addictive. I'm a programmer by trade, and absolutely, there's a lot of patterns you learn that are appropriate for like gambling machines. I mean, you learn them so that you don't do them, and then when you actually see them in the wild, you see actual other developers putting them in their products, not just games, but just their web apps or their phone apps or whatever. It's very upsetting in a way. Um, like one I think of is a social media network I was on, and when you went to close your account, it showed pictures of your family members saying, we'll miss you," even though my family members had never said any such thing. It was just like this social media network had taken their photos and tried to apply like psychological manipulation. And I was just kind of like, well, this is why I'm leaving. This is one of the reasons I'm leaving. Um, I played a game recently, Slay the Spire, which is right on the line, I reckon, between compelling gameplay and some dark patterns. Like a classic dark pattern in software is you don't give the player an easy way to save and exit. Like you don't. Like, I don't mean just like click escape, save, exit. I mean there's no break in the gameplay. You know, you always you always leave a task unfinished. And I think Slay the Spire does that really well. But it does it. Oh, my voice has gone all croaky. What a pity, because it was a really good. It was a really good rant I was on. But anyway, so I think everybody working in software, we know now that the patterns we choose to code with, like the recipes we use, can affect people. And I think mainstream games at the moment are still in that, oh well, what are you going to do kind of phase. But I think queer developers are way ahead of the curve in kind of going, oh, actually, maybe we can do good stuff with this. Maybe we can actually leave people better than we found them, which is always good advice, I think. Um, so is that because I haven't done like why I love queer games for a few videos, and so I thought I'd try and put a bit of a blob out there. So I hope that was a good one. It was a bit rambling. And what happened with my voice in the middle? Clearly, I need more whiskey. Today's game: All in Love and War. All in Love and War? No, All in Love and War. Um, I don't know anything about it, so you don't like surprise content, look away. Although, having said that, there were two options to download this from the web page on itch. There was the regular version and the safe for work version. We've got the safe for work version. Um, just because, I guess queer games, heck yeah, we're playing it a little bit broad, we're a little bit, mainstream. Uh, I think in a perfect world, we wouldn't have safe for work versions, we would just have art. But we live in a bit of a Puritan age. Um, let's have a quick look at the options. Okay, this is looking a bit Renpie to me, but that's okay. Renpie games can be good. Um, yeah, I've got nothing to say. Let's go. The last few weeks for me have been the most grueling days I've had for what seems like an eternity. I'd just been accepted into the Marines. It was my first day. I was so overwhelmed. I felt like my life has changed completely overnight. While pondering, I heard a rugged voice calling out to me. Hey there, Marine. Okay. We're already getting a bit of a vibe for this game. I also have to take screenshots as we go through. And what I screenshot often reveals things about my own predilections. So buff army person. Screenshot instantly. Yes, Sergeant. Hardy, is there anything you need? Sergeant Hardy. Nothing, I just wanted to talk to you. Oh, he has nice eyes. Okay, then. I was trying to decipher what an NCO... I want to say non-commissioned officer, but if you asked me what that was, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I'm going to guess. Okay, and you can always correct me. This is like, you've heard about these things, and so it's a non-commissioned officer. I think it's someone who has worked their way up to an officer level through like the regular army training system. Like you can have a commissioned officer, I think, is someone who just applies to be an officer. I've got nothing to back that up with. That's just my kind of like, you know, you've got to go out on a limb sometimes. I didn't exactly have the option to refuse him. So your last name is Jones. What's your first name? Jaden. It's Jaden Jones. That's a good name. It's very it's very it's a very OnlyFans kind of name. Jaden Jones. What a lovely name. My name is Walter Hardy. I think you'll be in my unit, actually. Well, it's nice to meet you. The sergeant put his hand out for a handshake while sporting a toothy grin. He does have a toothy grin. Come on, I'm not going to bite you. Just shake my hand. I stared at him with a confused look on my face before I shook his hand slowly. Haha, there we go. I let go of his hand. Anyways, I'm not supposed to be talking to you like this since I'm an NCO and you're not. Once you become an NCO, let's become friends. I don't think that's possible, Sergeant Hardy. What, you're trying to annoy him? He could crack your skull like a watermelon. Although, wait, can you crack a watermelon with your hands? No. You crack your skull like a... Alright, gotta work on that. Well, maybe you'll change your mind later on. You seem like a nice guy. Well, see you later. Goodbye, Sergeant Hardy. That was weird. What's his deal? 20 years later. Okay, that's exciting. The sun began its decline when the blinding orange filled up the serene yet monotonous blue. Endless amounts of trees surrounded us as they stood in silhouette against the faint, colourful sky. A strong smell of ground and metal came my way ever so familiarly. The sounds of the winds going through the trees and leaves clashed with the endless grunts and banter of various marines coming and going as they've been told. 20 years later, in the middle of all this was me, Gunnery Sergeant Jaden Jones. I find it hard to believe there was anyone 20 years ago called Jaden with a Y. I've ordered my helpless Marines to do their daily training, and I've made sure they come back to base in one piece. That's what I've been doing for 19 years. Today has just been another dull day in my dull life. Come on, game. I've seen it all by this point. Nothing's been able to stir something in me for a long time. Gunnery Sergeant Jones. However, that doesn't mean things didn't still annoy me, no matter how often they came by. I think I have a stomachache. I don't think I'll be able to be on duty for a while. I've seen this excuse time and again. I knew my cue and told him, for someone with a stomachache, you seem to be in good posture. The Marine then decided to hunch over slightly and tried to fake a cold. This guy was a joke. Nice try, Lance Corporal Richards. Heck it up and go to base with us. The Marine hung his head down and whined quietly. Heckhole. Keep it to yourself, Lance Corporal Richards. I'm not in the mood for your bullheck today. The Marine grumbled to himself once again. I simply ignored him and walked to the base along with the rest of the platoon. I'm not really au fait with military stuff. I don't really know much about it. Although I've read a bunch of World War II autobiographies. During lockdown, I had a really good run where I just read a bunch, especially the Eastern Front, which we don't really learn about at school here. We learn a lot about the Western Front. In World War II, in the 1940s, in Europe, there were two really big lines of fighting. In the Western Front, sort of like France, Germany, and on the other side of Nazi Germany is like Germany versus Russia. We don't really learn about the Germany versus Russia bit, but it was actually kind of like the biggest battle of all time in the history of the world. Or we should just say in history, until we actually find another world. And so I thought, well, why not read some, and not the generals. You can always find, books by the generals saying, oh, I did a really great job. It wasn't my fault we lost 3,000 soldiers that day. I did a perfect thing. I wanted to read the books by the soldiers. And the thing about World War II is there's a lot of them. And a lot of them are self-published, which is, I find, kind of really interesting. Because I guess I like that kind of homemade sort of vibe, which is why we're here playing indie games. So I guess basically my whole knowledge of military stuff comes from reading autobiographies by German and Russian soldiers. So I don't know how that relates to this. Saying it was pleasant would be an absolute lie, but in any case, we arrived at the Marine base and the day was almost over. There's a lot less mud so far compared to those books. I checked the recreational centre and saw that the phone was available. Now is a good time to call my ma. It's been a while since I called her, so it was best I called her when I got the chance. She can be fussy whenever I don't call her enough times. And so I do. As I do so, I briefly wish I was back home with her, being able to enjoy quality time with her and my sisters. JJ. It's been 20 years. Then that thought abruptly vanished as her voice pierced through the confines of the phone. How are you? Where have you been? I haven't heard from you since forever. My ma was, and still is, an eccentric handful. She would always ask questions like these whenever she called me. She does have every reason to do so, considering how little I talk to her, but it can still be overwhelming. I'm doing fine. Working as a gunnery sergeant has a lot of work, so I haven't had the time to talk to you recently. The pressures exerted on me forced a strained voice out of my throat. Oof, I garbled that. But it can't be that hard for you. I told the Marines are quite lax when it comes to that sort of stuff. I can't do voices, I'm afraid. I can do like a couple of little voices. I can do like old person voice. I can do like California Valley Girl because that's my normal speaking voice. It's like totally like whatever. Ma, it's not that simple. I have to wait in lines and it's rare that they turn out to be so short. That's no excuse to be ignoring your ma like that, JJ. Family should be one of the first things on the brain. Yes, maybe. Um, it is, but I'm also caught up with work that it's quite difficult to keep track of things. A lot of queer games, I find parents are a very constant presence in queer games. I wonder why that is. I think maybe the average age of a developer in queer games is a bit younger than elsewhere, and so the stories they tell, there's a bit more like leaving home or still at home or away from home, but they're still kind of centered a bit on the family home. But also maybe there's a bit of trauma aspect to it, or maybe just we're all good kids to our parents. I understand you're working hard, but you should always try remembering to call your mum ever so often. I am calling you every so often. I know my mum would like me to call more often, but part of me is like, how often is that? Because I feel if I call like every day, that still wouldn't be enough. If I call like twice a day, that wouldn't be enough. I think mum would just be happy with like an open 24-hour line. But that's no way to live, mum. I shouted out ineptly. Even though only her voice came out of the phone, I almost saw my ma's disappointed frown from the other side of the phone. JJ, you shouldn't yell at your mother like that. It's a bad habit, and you should learn to break it. Isn't it? He's like 40 now. It's too late. Even though I didn't want to admit it, I knew she was right. Sorry, mum. For the last time, we're not going. Angry woman. For the last time, we're not going to Abby's. What is Abby's? Is that music too loud? Impossible. I got interrupted by a faintly familiar. The little green bar says it's a bit loud. Turn down a smidgen. I got interrupted by a faintly familiar voice mixed in with loud sobbing and kicking. Please, I really want to go, upset child. No, we can't waste our money on Abby's. Just stop caring about it. Is Abby's a thing? I don't know what. Do this somewhere else, Sophie. I'm talking to your brother here. Sorry about that. Life's been hectic under our situation. What is this accent? I've always heard pretty good advice, I think, or good writing advice. Well, it's advice that I subscribe to. It's really tough to write accents, and so you probably shouldn't bother. Like maybe do it like a little bit of the flavor, but it's almost like unhelpful to just try and like write what you think an accent is, because it's so subjective, because I can guarantee you the person who made this game, they have a really strong accent to me. Anyways, you were saying, I mean, is she from like New Jersey or something? The awkward tension suffocating me seemed to be lost in her. Oh, I promise not to raise my voice next time I call you. Seems like something biting at you that's gotten you down. You want to talk about it? My mum was so good at spotting what was up with me that it was downright frustrating. I just wish she wasn't so direct about it. No, everything's fine. You don't have to worry about it. It was obvious that I was hiding something from her. A boyfriend? JJ, you can't hide it from me. You know that. If I'd hung up then, I'd look immature. Lying would never get past her. I'd been forced into a corner. I had to tell her something. It's just, life's kind of boring. Every day feels the same. I feel like I haven't done much in the past 43 years of my life. Poor Jaden. JJ, life is boring for us all, and if it ain't boring, it's painful. Oof. Okay, this game is light on art. to be honest. We saw one character early on in the game, about 10 minutes ago, and the rest has just been text on screen. Um, but it's got a certain charm. I think this game is quite charming. This is a very useless comment from his mum, though. But it's our job to make our lives interesting. Okay, that's more interesting. I appreciate the advice, but I don't think I'll be able to make my life riveting or anything since I have this job to do. JJ, I'm very grateful you have a job to keep yourself afloat, but maybe you feel like you are trapped in that job. I understand that. Maybe the mum had a stroke at some point, and she's just sort of mumbling. But maybe you should consider that's what's holding you hostage isn't your job but yourself. Your mentality is the problem. A small part of my gut told me she's absolutely right. She's never been wrong whenever has given you advice before. So why would she be wrong about this? It told me. Wow, this person really. I can understand why they're in the Marines, because they really like to follow orders. But my burning irritation repressed it inside. Thanks for the advice, Mum. Oh, Mummy, look at me, flying this plane. Hey, that's my bra. Give that back right now. Again, I get interrupted once again by the other end of the phone. I'll call you back, sweetie. Take care. Love you. Goodbye. For what was supposed to be a nice call from home became a tiny gaping hole of stress for me. How wonderful. What was stressful about that? That was pretty low stress. That was a low stress conversation with a parental unit. Well, there was no point agonizing over it then. Normally I'd have more time in my break to do something else for a little while, but since I lost track of time that day, I had to go back to my usual duties soon after my phone call with my mum. My ma. Mama. Before heading to bed, I had to check on some Marines doing clean-up duty. I like this drawing. This is a little bit abstract, this one. I wonder if where they get the art from. I mean, this could be not a real place. I think like the picture of the birds, I think was like a posterized image of birds, but this looks like it's hand drawn a bit. Clean better, basically. It was the same thing each time. Either they sighed with relief knowing they'd be able to spare some liberty, break time for themselves, or they had to prostrate themselves knowing they got hecked over once again. Part of me wished that I could have been more loose with these guys, but I couldn't have risked being too lax on the job. I was about to head out when I came across a familiar face. Hey, Gunnery Sergeant Jones. Doesn't he ever retire? I thought you kicked out of the army at like 44 or something. It was Sergeant Major Walter Hardy. He had been in the same platoon as me since I'd been enlisted. He'd always been nice and friendly towards me since then, albeit in an unorthodox way. I just feel like 19 years of nothing happening is a very long time for this game. This is a very long time frame for this game. Actually, he acted that way towards everyone, but everyone told me that he interacts with me the most, so I guess that's something. I saluted as I responded to him. Yes, Sergeant Major Hardy. What business do you have with me, Sergeant Major? Glad you asked. Do you know what tomorrow is? It's our 20-year anniversary. Of course I knew. Everyone in the goddamn Marines knew what the next day was. The Heckdam Marines. Yes, Sergeant Major. Tomorrow is the ball of the Marine Corps' birthday. Oh. And you know what that means? That I didn't know. I'm afraid I'm not sure what you mean, Sergeant Major. After 20 years, they're very formal. He slammed his hand down on my shoulder, giving me a small shock as he answered his own question. It means we get to celebrate with beer, you slowpoke. Hehe. I came here to announce to you and all your imps that I'm throwing my own private party, and all you guys are invited. Okay. Now my understanding, this could be completely garbled, is that different armies have different alcohol policies. Especially when they're deployed, I think. And so like, the British Navy, you get like a shot of rum each day, and it's a tradition going back like 500 years. And I think the Australian Defence Force, you've got like 2 beers a day. I don't know if you're allowed to stockpile though. Like, do you have to drink them that day or you don't get them? Or can you save up for like 6 beers and have a bit of a bender on the battlefield? And I think maybe in the American army, you don't get alcohol at all. Very, very interesting. I don't know how true any of that is. I wonder what the other armies around the world do, like the French army or the Russian army or the Japanese army. And when they all get together, like when they're like co-deployed on exercises, is there a bit of like teasing or like alcohol swapping? Because I reckon you could do some sort of rum beer concoction that would be quite tasty, like mixing cocktails. Like you get a bit of rice wine from the Malaysians, you get like a little beer from the New Zealanders, maybe like I don't know, one of the Mediterranean countries they bring the olives, and you just mix up a little cocktail. War sounds quite pleasant now I think about it. I'm throwing my own private party, and all of you guys are invited. Everyone in the room, who I briefly forgot existed momentarily, cheered as loudly as they could. Part of me wanted. Don't get me started on army rations. There's whole YouTube channels devoted to just trying different rations from around the country, around the world. It's pretty interesting. Like the Austrians have like rations for like high in the mountains, and once again the Australians for like desert rations. And this, yeah, and people like rate the taste. When I was a kid, we're a big bushwalking family, and we're out bushwalking one day, and we're camping for the night, and there's like all this sort of loud noises getting closer and closer and closer, and then suddenly we're surrounded by soldiers, and it's like Dad had led us onto a like firing range, and we'd set up tent there, and set up the tents there. And so they were a bit surprised to find us there, and we were surprised to find them there. But they shared with us their rations. And I remember as a kid just getting these little tubes of jam and little tubes of butter. And it was like the coolest thing ever. Thanks, Dad, for almost getting us killed. But also thanks, Dad, for getting us those little jam squeezy tubes. Part of me wanted to tell him that they couldn't go, but knowing Hardy, I wasn't exactly able to do that. Actually, it's one of the few things I knew about him, that he likes to party with all the young Marines. At the time, at least. I understand, Sergeant Major. The other Marines and I will come to this party of yours. Oh God, Jaden's got a real stick up his ass. Wouldn't have it any other way. It will be at the Cabana Beach Bar at 10 p.m. Make sure that all of you little rascals show up. I really like Sergeant Major Hardy. I mean, I think he'd be terrible in a war, but it's like running the barracks. I'm like, he bring the parties on, man. Every Marine in the room belted that out with such enthusiasm. I saw how it was. Before he left, he gave me a request. Oh, and one more thing. Wear your Speedos. Oh. He walked towards me and put both of his hands on my shoulders. He then looked me in the eye to tell me something that was apparently important. Jaden, bring as much beef jerky with you to the party. I think Jaden is the beef jerk. Okay. I will do that, Sergeant Major. Great, wonderful, truly marvellous. He giddily cheered out while shaking my shoulders back and forth. I was known in the Marines for my cooking, considering I grew up with 3 sisters, and I did make him beef jerky one time. Though I can't believe he remembered that. I really love Sergeant Major Hardy. No, Sergeant Major Hardy, but I really don't like Jaden Jones. Also, don't be so anal with me, Jaden. At least not in a bad way. Hehehe. My face flushed when he told me that. What? Loosen up, will ya? We've known each other for decades now. This is my point. Gosh. I'm not going to bite you if you talk a little casually to me. I want to see more of that wonderful personality of yours. Well, it's difficult to be so casual when I'm on duty, but I'll do my best to lighten up with you, Sergeant Major. Can't blame you, but I better see a little change the next time I see you, okay? I mean, this is a little bit awkward. Like, this is a work environment, and here's your superior. No wonder Jaden's a little uncomfortable. Of course, Sergeant Major. But I mean, Hardy has he crossed the line? Some of his comments have been a little bit whiffy. But it's been 20 years. Alright then, that's what I like to hear. Well, see you guys at the ball. The man left the scene as spontaneous as he came, leaving no hint that he was ever there. Here. All the Marines left to go back to their dorms while I walked towards my own. On the way, I couldn't have helped but think back to Hardy, his boisterous attitude leaving a footprint on my brain. I may not have known much about him then, but I did know that he's very unconventional. He liked to make bizarre comments towards his lower ranked Marines and often gave them ridiculous demands. One time, when I was a mere Lance Corporal, he asked his Marines to kick him in the balls. Someone actually attempted to do this, but right when his foot was inches away from his crotch, Hardy dodged his attack and then tackled him while he was vulnerable. Okay, this is sounding a little bit dodgy. He then assured him that he's got balls, but maybe not nimbleness. Later that night, the Marine was given liberty time. Hardy did get an earful by his superiors when several complained for harming a soldier. But I honestly believe no one really minded it, and those who called him out only did so because it seemed like something a Marine should do. What? You know, the culture you walk past is the culture you accept. That was his most egregious prank, though, and after that he never got any complaints from his Marines. Okay. But the thing that stood out the most for him was there was never any barrier. Okay, I don't want to be this person that's like, oh, you know, we can't have superior people in the workplace, you know, sleazing on to their subordinates. Let's just take this game in the spirit that it's presented. Like, it is fictional. It is clearly sort of like an army marine fantasy kind of thing. So let's not, you know, let's just have a bit of a laugh with it. But the thing that stood out the most out for him, there was never any barrier between him and the other Marines. Even when I was just a boot, I didn't feel anything was stopping me from being good friends with him. Every other NCO always made their ranks abundantly clear, yet Hardy was different. He simply didn't care, even though he could realistically get fired for acting like that. I thought about all this when I arrived at my dorm room. Yes, I mean, reading those books, the regular troopers really liked the superior officers that were like down to earth, or maybe not standing on ceremony too much. But does that make you a good officer? I don't know. I thought about all this when I arrived at my dorm room. I'll be honest and say that I'm not sure why his chance encounter prompted my mind to fixate on him so much, but I think too much of it at the time. I opened the door to my room and saw an everyday sight. With plain walls that have only the dust pinned to them, and the neatly made bed, this dorm room was quite plain, but I couldn't have complained about something that brought me decent shelter. By instinct, I put on my cap as soon as I came into the room. I guess it's a habit I made from my time here. Before I went to bed, I decided to read my book about various dinosaurs. Everything you wanted to know about dinosaurs, including stuff you probably didn't want to know. That's a good title. But as I grabbed the book, I took a glance at two possessions of mine. A kitty cat. First was my mirror, stained with a small crack made ages ago. We're handsome, but we're a bit angry. You know, we need a good hecking. First was oh yes, we've done that. I never thought to replace it ever since. I kept it only for practical reasons. But when I looked at the glass, I saw myself and thought back to how I've changed between when I first came here and how much I didn't change. It made me uncomfortable looking back at my time here, so I quickly discarded it. Yes, I can imagine. The other object I spotted was my journal. We're not referencing the kitty cat. I'm getting goldfish vibes. If you've ever played Coming Out on Top, I'm getting goldfish vibes from the kitty cat. When I first enlisted, I thought a journal to chronicle my days as a Marine. I thought I would have a ton of things to write about, but eventually everything became a blur, so I didn't bother to write anything after a few years or so. Wow, Jaden, you look so tortured, man. I didn't even write about the times I rose up in the ranks because I didn't care at that point. I only kept that because I didn't have anywhere else to keep it. Well, it didn't matter. I turned my attention to the book I had a grip on. I read a section about the Nyasasaurus. Is there a picture? Possibly the oldest species of dinosaur ever known to humans. Nyasasaurus. I'm just going to DuckDuckGo that. It's pretty... I'm going to say it's your bog standard dinosaur. You'd know it if you saw it. It's not particularly notable otherwise. Yeah, see? Poor dinosaurs. Like 99.999% of them are just kind of like, you know, look like that. but that 0.001% have like frills or like armor plating or like giant teeth. They're the ones to remember. I just went to the museum in Perth recently, and they had like a little dinosaur section, and I think they inflated the size of the dinosaurs by like 10%. And I'm like, I'm okay with that because they had the Ultrasaurus model taking up the whole room, and you're just like, it's impossible to believe something like that was real. Then you turn the corner, and they had like a half. They had the head of like a megalodon, which is the giant shark, and it's just so big. It was just like this shark is just the biggest. Like you would just fit in its mouth. I would just fit in its mouth, and you're just like, museums are great. Every time I thought about dinosaurs, my mind became at ease. As a child, I would always spend my free time learning about the big guys. I even had a game of basketball, a game of street basketball named after the Titanosauria. Unfortunately, time was not on my side, as I had to put both the book and my memory of it when I still had my childhood curiosity down and gone right to sleep. Oof. As my consciousness began to wander, I began to think of the next day and the party. Look, we've only got half an hour normally, and we've already done that. But we went under time on the previous game because I do 2 games a day, and also I really want us to get to this party because I feel like that's a fair go at this game. But I couldn't have ignored an order from Hardy, so it was better if I'd gone and made the most out of it. So in the army, can you order someone to go to your party? That would have really helped with my birthdays. The next morning, before I knew it, the ball had begun. I was in my dress blues, listening to the speech provided by the commanding officer. For something that celebrates, let's look up the alcohol thing. Let's take the time off. Okay. Alcohol. What would they call it? I bet it's got some funny ye olde name, like the Daily Kip. Alcohol allowance, Australian Defence Force, and then we'll look up the US. Alcohol consumption is permissible during general peacetime service. However, alcohol consumption during deployment should be no more than 2 daily drinks. Oh. Maybe I made up the thing about the beer. Well, Australian soldiers deployed get beer. Ooh, no. The top link is Australia's Special Forces drinking the beer out of the prosthetic leg of a dead Taliban soldier that they killed. Okay, well, awkward. Beer rations for Australian troops. Okay, here we go. Maybe only on an Anzac Day. They'll get a 2 beer per man ration, which is extraordinary because we normally don't have alcohol here in the theatre. Oh, okay. So, well, maybe it's an old thing. Maybe it's like a Vietnam War thing. And on special days, they get the 2 beers. That's pretty cool. What about rum allowance? Rum allowance, Royal Navy. Rum ration, also called the tot, was a daily amount of rum given to soldiers on Royal Navy ships. It was abolished in 1970. Ah, well, there you go. I was kind of right, but I was like 50 years out. Story of my life. I was struggling to keep my eyes open. Things were happening so fast that I mentally woke up when the cake was served. Poor, like he needs to change career. Celebration was over, and now civilians and Marines alike were having fun partying with each other. I, however, had other places to go, courtesy of Sergeant Major Hardy. I took off and went to the Cabana Beach Bar. I called a taxi to get there. The taxi driver noted my rather fancy dress blues, and I just brushed him off. Oh, that's cute. When I arrived at the bar, I could hear that I like the filtering on that. Or is it CG? It's good either way. I walked up to the door. Yes, it was almost 10 p.m. I took a deep breath. the sweat of dozens of Marines. Despite the fact I got here at the appointed time, I was apparently late, as countless Marines were already partying when I got here. Oh, Sergeant Major Hardy. Just come in with the fur. Finally you came, Jaden. Come on, the fun's about to begin. I saw Hardy sitting proudly beside the bar, surrounded by waves of Marines. Everyone in the bar was so lively, they were all just chatting to each other. They all had bottles of alcoholic drinks gripped to their palms, although curiously all of them were sealed shut. I wasn't sure if Hardy just made people rowdy with his breathing alone, or if I was just unlucky enough to never see them like this. Probably both. In any case, I approached Hardy and took a seat next to him. Hardy waited for me to get somewhat comfortable before he bombarded me with questions. What took you so long? It's also not a very interactive game. I've literally just been sitting hitting enter for the whole thing. Wait, before that, did you bring the beef jerky? I took out a bag of beef jerky hidden within my dress blues and placed it in a hand right in front of him. Of course I do, Sergeant Major. Nice. He snatched the bag out of my hand. I got to admit, you're crazy good at hiding things if you manage to sneak in hecking beef jerky without anyone noticing. I mean, where'd you hide it considering you were wearing that uniform? That extremely tight uniform. I hid it within my shirt, Sergeant Major. With that, I noticed his form of attire. Actually, why aren't you in your uniform at this time, Sergeant Major? He burst out laughing like a massive wave before his hand made its way onto my shoulder twice. Why would I wear a uniform to a bar? After the ball, I got into some normal clothes from my room and got over here. I briefly looked up with a dumbfounded look on my face. I will say right now, you look damn snazzy in that uniform. I mean, can't we see him in his uniform? Maybe I should have kept wearing that itchy uniform to get a good lay for the night. Hehe. I was so caught off guard by his sincere compliment that I barely remembered what I was thinking about just then. And stop calling me Sergeant Major. You're off duty here, so right now I'm just an old fart in a bar to you. You shouldn't be so formal at a time like this. I don't know. I couldn't believe what he was saying. But none of that. Heck, just call me Walter. I sighed as I stood, no choice but to listen to his command. Okay, I wouldn't call you Sergeant Major when I'm off duty. Now we're talking, but I don't think I can call you Walter. Never mind. Would you mind if I simply called you Hardy instead? Hey, it takes a bit of effort to get used to, eh? Well, you can call me Hardy if you must. He took a bite out of a piece of beef jerky that he brought from the small... I love beef jerky, but it's very energy dense. You know, it's definitely something you can't sit at a desk eating it. Only when you're like out bike riding. Heck, that's delicious. Amazing job making the jerky, my fine guest. Excuse me, I thought. Thanks. Don't mention it. Now that's settled. So wait, I thought it took like quite a while to make jerky, but it seems like he made it within the day. Let the party begin. He screamed his soul out so loud I had to cover my ears for a brief minute. Shortly after, everyone became so enraptured with the now bustling atmosphere that they gave their own cry in response. It was so overwhelming that I thought I would faint, but I had to persist. The crowd persisted, but no matter the show of rowdy energy, none could have competed with Harvey, as despite his age, he managed to overpower everyone else in the bar. Now that we're locked and loaded, it's time to crack those bad boys open. I'm a bit bewildered by the fact that he really said bad boys out loud. All at once, everyone popped open the caps of their beverages. Hardy sure knows how to throw a party. Cheers to the good men that serve the great country that is America. Everyone cheered and they raised their glasses to the sky, some of them coming into contact with each other. Hardy jumped down to the floor to bring himself back with the rest of us before they all drank to their heart's content, with a few sighs of relief coming to fruition. Hardy himself downed a bottle so roughly I wouldn't be surprised if he cracked the glass by how hard he squeezed it. Oh, death grip. When he finished, he let out a sigh of relief you could hear coming home after... He let out a sigh of relief you'd hear from coming home after a hard day of work. Nothing gets your rocks off like downing a whole bottle of cheap gin. Does that mean something different in the US? When he raised his gaze towards my direction, his radiant smile turned into a small frown of disappointment. Hey, JD, how come you aren't drinking? I was so caught up with the spectacle of everything that I forgot that I was supposed to be part of it. Oh, sorry, Hardy. I'm just a little shy, that's all. Also, JD... Once again, he smacks my shoulder with an even stronger force. Don't apologize. JD's my new nickname for you. You don't mind, do you? I answered him honestly. I don't, but he interrupted me by doing something he considered to be nice. Hey, bartender, 1 vodka for the handsome stud over here. My heart jumped a little with those words said so casually. Stud? Of course, I'm referring to you. Don't be so embarrassed. You got looks that most men your age would kill for. I've been with several men in the past, and yet I've never been told I was handsome by anyone, much less from a man like Hardy. Something weighed in my chest at that moment. Oh, I was so flustered by his remark towards me that it took me a while to object to his treat. Wait, you shouldn't. It's too late, as the silver-haired man had already received my gift from the bartender. Nonsense. Marines should look out for their fellow people no matter the situation, so take it already. Oh. Declining wasn't an option. I awkwardly took the cold and glacial bottle. Yes. I slowly twisted. Okay, I think I've hit my 30-minute limit, and it's like I've realized no matter how much I actually do enjoy the game, my concentration starts to waver. So let's finish it up there. All in Love and War. I really love the setting. Um, what do I want to say about that? I guess I do find it really interesting that like the part of the same-sex attraction part of being gay is that you know that whole sort of military muscle kind of thing is kind of enticing, but then on like the queer politics side of it, the whole idea that we like killing each other is really horrible. And so I do always think when there's like a military themed gay game, I find it like extra intensely interesting because it's kind of like how does it navigate? How is it going to navigate between those kind of two competing, ultra masculine and sort of, but it's sort of ultra kind of quite anti-gay worlds? How does it handle that? And I think this game is kind of like just sort of throwing its arms up in the air and said, Sergeant Hardy, you gotta love him. Uh, and I thought it was very entertaining. Just really, like notably in this game, Sergeant Hardy sort of leaps off the screen a bit. Like there was just a real energy to that character, and that's quite hard to put into characters. So often you play a game and all the characters kind of go along at the same pace. All right, that's All in Love and War. It's available on itch, super cheap or free even. There's a not safe. There's I guess a sexy version and a safer work version. So if you're interested in that, uh, I think this could be the game for you. But other than that, thanks for joining me on Queer Games Heck Yeah, and I'll see you around. As soon as I figure out how to end these streams. All right, bye.